Are y'all sick of me yet? Hopefully not, because today I have my tea and I'm ready to spill it. Welcome to episode 3, where I give you debrief after debrief after debrief. If you're new to this channel, I'm essentially picking up where I left off 2 years ago, right after my previous breakup. Episode 1, we did a little recap of the breakup and tips for getting through a breakup. Episode 2, we did a little psychoanalyzing in terms of the emotions that come with a breakup. And this episode's gonna be a little bit different, a little bit more juicy, because today is a little tell-all of what I was doing during my single era. And let's just say I have some stories. Before I get started, mom, dad, if you're watching this, now would be a good time to stop. And if you do decide to keep watching, never mention it to me because I will deny it until I die. Let me just set the stage for my single era, because this breakup was very different than previous ones that I had gone through. It was a longer relationship. It was a more serious relationship. We lived together, and I was in my mid-20s having an existential crisis, as one does in their mid-20s. And you already know I'm gonna film a whole video debriefing my quarter-life crisis. I feel like because that was my 5th relationship that had quote-unquote failed, I entered this single era with not a lot of hope and just overall feeling quite defeated when it came to dating, when it came to men, which on one hand is kind of sad, but on the other hand, I feel like I really became my own person during this single era. Even though my confidence has slowly increased throughout the years, I feel like it really rose to the occasion during my single year, because for the first time in my life, I was like, damn, I really just gotta fend for myself out here. I was living by myself. I wasn't with my parents anymore. I didn't have my partner. So I was like, you know what? We're gonna make the most of this. So this is where I kind of rebrand into a baddie or a bad bitch. Rebranding after a breakup is not an original experience. I'm pretty sure every single girl I know does that, and I've done it at least 5 times from my previous relationships. But there's just something so empowering about changing up your look, changing up your attitude, putting all of your energy into yourself and making yourself better, that a breakup expedites. I said this in my last video, but no girl falls after a breakup. She might dip for a little bit, but she always goes up and betters herself after. So if you're looking for a really quick way to glow up and grow up, go through a breakup. During this little baddie phase of mine, not only did I change myself physically, I like cut my bangs, I was starting to dress differently and start experimenting with different styles, which I absolutely love. If you were there for turning myself into a bad bitch series, you're a real one. I was actually looking back on those recently and I miss those videos. I might bring them back. And then on top of all that, I was also a little bit more cutthroat and more bad bitch-esque in terms of my attitude. I think previous to this era, a lot of people would say I'm like wholesome, a little sheltered maybe. And don't get me wrong, I'm still all those things, but now I'm those things with an attitude. Especially when it came to interacting with men and like flirting with men, I was being so cutthroat because I literally didn't care. And that's the other thing after this breakup, because I was kind of like down in the dumps and not trusting that a partner could exist for me. Every interaction I had with a man was so unserious because I just couldn't fathom it going anywhere, which put way less pressure on all the experiences I was having, made everything way more fun. And I feel like I was also attracting more people that way because I just had like a don't give a fuck attitude. Once I kind of had this new persona crafted for me, I did re-download the apps, which I never can recommend to you because that is where dreams go to die. But I also think it's just a rite of passage when you're single and you're bored. It's almost like a social media platform. Pretty early on in this dating app journey, I had matched with someone and we were planning to go on a date. He had to postpone it, I think 1 or 2 times. And by the second time, I was like, hey, this guy is wasting my time. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends instead. So I go over to my friend's house unannounced, spontaneously. We start having little cocktails, start feeling a little frisky, and then we decide to go out. The friend that I was with knew people who were going out downtown, so we decided to meet up with them, and this is where the story gets juicy. I introduced myself to the group, and I feel like I was getting the vibes of like, what are you doing here? Who are these people? And so right off the bat, me and my friend felt a little bit ostracized from this main group. No problem though, because me and my friend can have a good time by ourselves. We went to the bar, we started having more drinks, and I think we maybe mingled with the group a little bit at this first place until it was time to move on to the next place. Shockingly, they invited us to come. I wasn't expecting that from our first impression, but we were just there to have a good time, no pressure. We're not here to make lifelong friends. We get to the second place, and this is where the world starts spinning a little bit. I'm having a lovely time, but I'm also on planet Mars. I'm dancing alone in the dance floor. I'm absolutely losing myself in the music. The crowd is starting to look a little bit blurry. And if I think about it a little too hard, I'm afraid I made a fool of myself, which is why we're not gonna think about it too hard. Now, this is where we start to lose a little bit of memory, but I'm gonna tell the story based off of what I do recall. As I'm standing in the middle of the crowd on the dance floor, I recall the crowd parting ways, and I see one of the guys that was part of the group that we had originally come with talking to another girl at the bar. Now, this is where we lose some pieces of the puzzle, because the next thing I remember is me standing in front of him at the same spot at the bar, and the girl is nowhere to be found. I don't know how I approached him. I don't know how I got rid of that girl, and I don't know what we were talking about by the time I regained consciousness. But at that point, I had essentially said, do you want to get out of here? Now, quick segue, because if you don't know me personally, this is very out of character. And at the time, me and my friends were coining this character that I had, this nonchalant, baddie, party girl side of me. We were calling her Pam. Not Sam, Pam. And so this is actually Pam's story time. It's not my story time. I was not there for any of it. This is also shocking to me because, like I said, when we first met up with this group, they were not having it with us. So the fact that he was flirting with me, entertaining me, and then ultimately went home with me, clearly Pam has riz that I'm not aware of. Now, this guy was the first guy I was intimate with after my breakup. In a way, it was kind of empowering because it was just the first sign that there's so much more to experience outside of my previous relationship that I have yet to explore. And so even though I knew nothing was going to be serious with this guy, at least it was a signal to me that, like, okay, not all options have been exhausted just yet. Also, disclaimer, as fun as that story sounded, I did have to throw up while he was still in my apartment. So moral of the story is drink responsibly, or else you're gonna wake up the next day with crippling anxiety that you embarrass the F out of yourself. Now, this little fling with this guy lasted a total of 2 hookups. Even though I was in the realm of entertaining new suitors, I don't do well with wishy-washiness and poor communication. I'm busy and I like a plan and I like you to stick to that plan, and I wasn't getting that from this guy, and therefore I categorized him as a waste of time. Now, keep in mind, I'm also on the apps, and this is the only time that I have actively been saying that I wanted something casual. I'm very much the type of person who dates to marry, and so at this point I knew that the next time I wanted to date seriously, I wanted it to be forever lasting. And like I said, the energy that I had inside of me was not giving everlasting relationship, and so I knew I wanted to stay within the short-term casual realm or nothing. One of my favorite lines on the dating apps to gauge whether somebody was in line with my casual endeavors was to ask them on a scale from marriage with 7 children to one night stand with your pants still around your ankles, where do you fall on the spectrum? I feel like those kinds of questions are ridiculous and entertaining enough, but still give you the answer that you want. So feel free to take that and run, because I shan't ever be on the dating apps ever again. Now, I think I maybe only went on a couple more dates in between the first guy that I hooked up with and my ex. Now listen, in general, my blanket statement is never return to your ex. Somehow the situation actually worked in my favor, but again, wouldn't recommend because the risks are high. Also, disclaimer, this is not the ex that I had recently broken up with. This was like a past ex, years and years and years had gone by. How we rekindled is I saw him on the dating apps, and I cannot stress to you at that point of time, my do it for the plot mentality was at an all-time high. And it wasn't even a plot that I was willing to share. There was no way I was gonna tell any of my friends that I was reaching out to a past partner. But the storyline and the plot in my head, oof, it was going strong. I think I ended up texting him because one of his Hinge photos was a photo that I had taken, and we immediately started talking really casually, and I think he asked me out in that first conversation that we had. A little Spark Notes backstory with this ex as well is that this was probably my most toxic / tumultuous relationship. At the end of the day, we were both just very not compatible. I can do a whole story time on this because we both played a very interesting part in the downfall of this relationship. And I think because of that rocky path, I knew in my heart I would never, ever, ever date this person again. It doesn't matter how much they riz me up. There was no way he'd be able to win me back. And that's why I felt more safe in my decision to reach out. Obviously, nothing is certain. So again, even if you think that, exercise caution. I ended up saying no to the date and kind of told him that I was looking for something very casual, very low commitment, to which he was down for, and we actually drafted up like a fake contract of things we would and wouldn't do in this like casual relationship. I still remember the first time he came over, we were just having a conversation and catching up, and in a weird way, I almost feel like this return healed a lot of things that were unresolved from our previous relationship. We had really bad communication, and so to be able to talk again without all of the pressure of a relationship and without our more immature mindsets from years past, I feel like I could humanize him a lot more instead of pinning him as the devil. We were really only seeing each other for like 1 or 2 months very infrequently. Like I said, it was very casual, low maintenance. And while it was relatively smooth between us, I feel like the universe was sending me major signs not to be engaging with this person at this time. I always say this, your body will tell you when you are not compatible with someone, and my body was telling me that I was not compatible with him. Sorry if you find this gross, but I was getting yeast infections, and at this time, I very, very rarely would get a yeast infection, so that was sign number 1. Sign number 2 is I got norovirus. If you don't know what norovirus is, look it up. Essentially, you are excreting out of both ends. I think I threw up 9 times in a row and would throw up anytime anything touched my stomach, including water. And so I had reached a new level of dehydration where I genuinely thought I was going to die. I think I texted him about it and he said that he also had those symptoms recently, so I know I got them from him. And it was not long after that where I decided to cut it off, but I actually decided to cut it off because I entered a situationship, which is my first situationship I've ever had. Now that situationship was a roller coaster in itself and it deserves its own video, so that is what my next video is going to be. I know this video is a different side of myself, but you know what? I've got layers, okay? I'm an onion. Now this corner of the internet is a very safe space, so if you want to leave your do it for the plot single era stories down below, I would love to read through them and hear what you guys got up to. Otherwise, let's meet back here in around a week and talk about my situationship. It's already giving me a headache thinking about it. Love you so much. Bye.